Boundless Spirit, pushing the limits of talk radio with Charlene Springer.
I'm Becky Long. I'm Sharon Houghton, and I'm on Boundless Spirit Radio with Charlene Springer.
Welcome to Boundless Spirit Radio with Charlene Springer. And we've got one heck of a show for you today. This is one of those shows that a lot of things blew before we could get on the air. So usually when that happens, there's something really big, something very important, actually, for you to listen to. And today's show, we have as our guest Sharon Houghton. And I love this woman, and also Becky Long. Sharon I met Sharon very interestingly many years ago. And, you know, people come to her from all over the world because she has done like incredible things with just her presence, her grace. She does the apparitions, and she has this incredible gift that she willingly shares with the world. So she has people that call her from all over the world, and she would be what you would call a modern-day mystic. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi. Good to hear from you. Good to be on your show.
Great. And we also have Becky Long, and Becky Long she's from Columbus, Ohio, well, raised in Columbus, Ohio, and she's a proud mother of 4. One of the things and this is why she has this interaction with Sharon, it was an issue that was going on with her son. So that's how the two really came together to create what we're going to talk about today. And we're talking about Sharon's grace, the gift that she has, and how it helped change Becky's life. So welcome, Becky.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and chatting with you.
Great. So now, Sharon, let's first start with you. How did you get a gift where you could see apparitions of Mary and sometimes the Christ being? How did you get this?
So it started really in 1998, and I was working for a TV station in Columbus, Ohio, and I was on my way to see a client, and I got a phone call from my father, and he had said that he had been diagnosed with an aneurysm starting in his aorta, and I really didn't know what that meant. And I talked to him on the phone about it a little bit, and we hung up, and I went to my meeting, and on the way back, I stopped in the shrine in Cary, Ohio, and I lit a candle, and the prayer that I said was, God, I know you're there. Blessed Mother, I know you're there. But I know you're really, really busy. But if you could let me know if my dad will be okay, I'd appreciate it. And I lit the candle and I left the church and never thought anything more about it. And that night, I was awakened by somebody shaking my shoulder very hard. I thought it was my son, actually. I thought maybe something was wrong. And I jumped up, and she was standing in front of me on white clouds with her hands in grace. And she said, you're going to bring me 2 rosaries. The first one, he'll make it through the surgery, and the second one will be at his death. The next day, went to work, and this woman handed me 2 rosaries. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And so I went home that night and said, do it again. Do it again if this is true. And she did. And from that point on, I started having seeing the unseen. And it started in dreams, and it just kept building from that point to now, where I can see all the way down to the cellular level of the body.
Wow. This has progressed because not only that, you are also able to connect with people that have transitioned.
Yes, that's correct. So it makes for a very interesting life, let's put it that way. I see where sometimes people see one, I see 2. It's the best way to put it. It's seeing the soul that is around them. And what it looks like, Charlene, is when you see a reflection in the window, that's the clarity that I get.
Mm-hmm. And so you can just, and so, I mean, what does that feel like to connect to people's loved ones like that?
Well, honestly, in the beginning, I was scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
I was very nervous about it, didn't know what was wrong with me. Had myself checked, tested, tried, you name it. Had a spiritual guide from the church for 4 years. Went to numerous ministers, doctors, everything, and said, tell me I'm wrong. And at the same time, I would prove to them that I was right. So finally, after years and years of doing it, you finally go, okay, I give. Okay, you win, and which is wonderful. But now I look at it as just such a blessing, and it's like breathing. It's just a part of my life.
Mm-hmm. And you and Becky are friends, and you said you talk a lot because you just released a video. You both did, and this is such a beautiful video because I woke up to it this morning, and it really just made my day. And on this video, you talk about this, Becky, how knowing Sharon and being a friend of Sharon's, that you were able to connect with her when this problem with your son showed up. So would you like to speak a little bit about that? First of all, your son's name, Jacob, and how old is he?
Jacob, he's 7 now, and he was 6 when this started. So, so Sharon and I have been friends for a while, and in 2014, the end of 2014, my son had his healthy child, no issues, but suddenly started having seizures. Mm-hmm. And we spent quite a bit of time with tests and different hospitals and things like that, but they didn't know why he was having these seizures. Even with EEGs, I was told that most people that have seizures typically have them in one area of the brain, whereas Jacob was having them all over his brain. So he was having different types of seizures, pretty much every type of seizure there is, from a full grand mal convulsion seizure to, just audible seizures, to staring seizures. He was having every type of seizure there was. They, prescribed a medicine that didn't work, so they added a second medicine to it. Then they added a third medicine, and by that time, they still weren't stopping, and we were getting pretty desperate. They wanted to add a fourth medicine, and my husband and I said, "No way, we're not doing it." He was so consumed with medication that it completely changed his personality. He started becoming aggressive. He started having issues with tingling in his extremities, and some other things. So we were really at a rough time with him, and just went to one of the best hospitals and still just weren't getting a reason why he was having this. And we were bound and determined to find another alternative way to treat these and figure out why he's having those. So I began, looking at other options, alternative medicine, healers, things like that. And I was just really feeling defeated. And at the time, I was using my social media as a way to ask for prayers and just kind of have that as an outlet, for people to keep Jacob in their thoughts. And one day when, we were really at our wit's end, I get a call from Sharon, who saw one of my social media posts and said, "Hey, how's he doing?" And I said, "It's not good. He's not doing well." And she began to tell me a vision that she had. Sharon, do you want to share what you saw?
Yeah. But
okay.
before we go there,
yeah.
First of all, what was it like for you and your husband? Because your husband, Malvin, his name?
Yes.
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 And, you guys have been together for a long time, and, you were so kind. You have 4 kids, but one of your kids is adopted. How do you do that, first of all? and still you work in the music business, so you're doing all this at the same time and still have a child that's having health issues. How did you guys just survive that first part of it?
Well, we are followers of Jesus, and we prayed a lot. We go to church every Sunday as a family, and that is very important to us, and that's the foundation of our family. And we're very, very blessed. I have been praying. This is kind of a longer story, but I'll try to keep it short. Basically, been praying for about 2 years. And just asking for God to use me to do his work and use the resources I have and the contacts and the networks and the position I am in my job and the type of contacts that I have, where I felt like I should be doing more with what I have, the resources I had. So I have been praying, help me be more like you, help me do something to make a difference and show your love and spread your word.
And didn't you know God had a sense of humor?
Yeah, he sure did. He definitely took my prayer seriously. Because about a year and a half later, he placed it on my heart, and put us, my husband and I, in a situation where my husband was coaching the basketball team for our church that my oldest son was playing on, and he became very good friends with a kid on the team named Cameron. We didn't know a whole lot about him, didn't know him very well, never really saw him being dropped off or who his parents were or anything like that. But him and Ethan, my oldest son, just got along. It was kind of weird because I'm like, do you guys know each other? And they're like, no, we just met. But they acted like brothers immediately. So he came home one night and said, I guess Cameron's going away. The foster family he's with, or somebody that has emergency custody of him, is giving him back because she's getting a divorce. And him and I just kind of looked at each other, and God right there said, this is what I want you to do. And I said, okay, here we go. Let's pray about this for a little bit, if this is what you want us to do. So we go to church. We've been praying about it. We asked a lot of our friends to pray about it. And a few weeks later, we're at church, and through the pastor's message, he spoke directly to us and told us that is what he wanted us to do. So I completely fell apart. That was actually the first time I've ever heard his voice directly to me and telling me something. So that was huge for me personally. And my girlfriend was also with us my husband and I at the time, and her and I are just sitting there bawling, and I'm like, wow, that is his work for sure. So we took Cameron in. It was a bit of a struggle. It's a very kind of, if you've ever seen the movie The Blind Side, it's very similar to that kind of story. He's one of 9, that kind of thing. So anyway, we ended up fighting for him, and we got awarded custody of him. So we took him in. And that was beautiful, and that was its own journey in itself, was him adjusting to our house, which he felt like was a castle compared to where he had been before. So adjusting him in that transition was, a blessing, and then also, was very difficult at times, and still is difficult at times, where we've had him for 3 years now. So that was in February of that year. And then 6 months later, I'm still, continuing my prayers of continue to use me, make me more like you. And then Jacob is, has this epilepsy, tag put on him. And we were just, this doesn't make sense. It came out of nowhere. It's not in the family, all those tests you go through and those questions that they ask of, did he have any trauma? Did he fall? Did he this? And we're like, no, not that we know of on a fall or this or that. And so all this starts happening, and poor Cameron, the little boy that we adopted, the first time all my kids saw Jacob have his first grand mal seizure was just absolutely devastating. And I remember very vividly Cameron tucked away in a corner just sobbing and was just, so scared and sad. And my other 2 kids just in shock. And, my husband's upset. And I immediately, for whatever reason, I guess it's my mom instinct, but I go into mom mode of keeping everybody calm and, working with him and holding him and then talking to him, getting through the seizure and that kind of thing. I didn't know anything about epilepsy. I didn't know anything about seizures. This was completely new to me.
Right.
So it was heartbreaking. It was one of the worst things that you could ever go through, is to sit and witness your child going through something, and there's absolutely nothing you can do but sit there and watch them go through it.
Now, what kind of strain did that put on your relationship with first your husband and then the relationship with the kids?
It was definitely a strain, but the beautiful part about it is I actually felt like it brought us all closer together, and it brought us all closer to God. And I didn't really think that was possible, but it really, his finger was definitely in it the entire time, because we just, it was pretty amazing what happened. And to pray and then to get your answers prayed, when we were at our lowest point and just did not know what to do. Nobody was helping us. We spent hours and hours. My husband was obsessed with, Googling and trying to research, and, it was hard. And then I got a phone call out of nowhere with a message, and that was Sharon.
Wow. So Sharon, with your grace, what happened? What made you call Becky?
So kind of back up a second, too, is that Becky and I knew each other primarily through work, but we always could see each other and consider each other very good friends. However, I never met Jacob. So I've never met these children or her children, unfortunately. And so I was actually working one February afternoon, and this all started for Becky in, I think, August.
Yes.
And I'm looking at my Facebook page, and I'm seeing little Jacob's head wrapped in gauze. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And that's when I reached out to Becky. At the moment that I reached out to Becky, literally sitting in the parking lot, I got very, very clearly from the Holy Spirit, it's a C3. I didn't even know what a C3 was. I just knew it was a C3. And then very clearly, like I said, it's like seeing it in the window, but this time it was even more clear. His spine was too straight. His C3 was off, and that was causing the light in his head, because I kept seeing all this light in his head, pulsating light, and it was from his spinal cord. So literally the bone in his neck was pushing against his spinal cord, creating these seizures and the light. So now I'm sitting back going, now how am I going to explain this one to Becky? Right? Here's a mom who's been through everything, on her way to different hospitals. Her son's, head is wrapped in gauze. And I just called her and I said, listen to me for just a minute. I know this is going to sound out there, but you know who I am, and I would never lead you down a wrong path. And Becky was so sweet and said yes. And I told her that a couple of things, that exactly what I just told you. But the other part of this that was so important is that the Holy Spirit was telling me 14 times he needs to get his head, his bone, his I don't want to say his bone, but his neck
adjusted,
cracked
yeah.
by a chiropractor.
Adjusted.
Thank you. Thank you. You can see I don't know my medical terminology. But anyway, adjusted 14 times. It was very clear to me 14 times. So I told Becky, let's go with this. Try it. There's a doctor I know that'll do a free x-ray for you. He's a chiropractor. Let's just see what he says and see if I'm right or wrong. If I'm right, I think you need to do it. So a week goes by, and I called Becky, and I said, well, how'd it go? And she goes, we didn't do it. And now I'm about ready to come out of my skin. I'm like, okay, now wait a minute. Let's back up. This is the Holy Spirit. I know it's hard to believe, telling me how to fix your child. Now I'm getting what I would say the God attitude of we're going to get your child there. So he did, and the chiropractor did confirm the C3 area as being a problem. But there's a part of this that's kind of twofold, and I always know God is working because he always takes me back to Scripture, and that is that it's funny because, as you know, the story progresses, and I'll let Becky finish the story, but my point of of concern was is that he was adjusted 14 times.
Right.
I find it very interesting, and I'm just going to throw this out to your audience, that the mother's name is Rebecca, the child is Jacob, and it was 14 times, because 14 is very biblical in the life of Jacob in the Bible. And so, Becky, with that being said, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Sharon can still freak me out with certain things. You know, when she says something and then, you know, it doesn't reveal itself until later.
Right.
So
because what made you hesitate? Like, you know, when she gave you that information.
The whole chiropractor, I didn't know. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew they crack your back, and I'm like, nobody is touching my baby's back. I'm sorry. Yeah. You know, it's just so fragile, and I was ignorant to how chiropractic works and that kind of thing. But, you know, I went home that day, you know, like she said, and I talked to my husband about it. And, you know, we did discuss it and considered it, but then we, you know, got distracted with life. And, you know, and then so when she called me back the next week, she was just stronger than I'd ever heard in terms of, you've got to do this. And, you know, she was so persistent, and I was like, done, I'm getting off the phone, I'm calling right now. And I did. And when we got him in there and he came in, and Sharon, keep in mind, had not told the doctor. She just said, I'm sending over somebody special. I want you to take care of him, see if there's something you can help him with. So he didn't know what the deal was. So when we came through and came in, he took an x-ray, and he came in there to go over it with us. And he tells me, oh, it looks like the C3 is off. You know, my husband and I are just like completely fell apart. Like, okay, this is the real deal here. And let me just tell you what Sharon said. And so we started immediately with the adjustments. And now the key to his adjustments that is a little bit different than the majority of chiropractors is not only does he do the adjustment, but after each adjustment, he takes him back he'll take Jacob back to their therapy room, and he does therapy on him where he has to lay on a wedge for a certain amount of time.
Right.
So he's not just adjusting them and sending him out the door. He's doing this therapy, and he's
resetting. Resetting the body.
Right. And he said only 10% of chiropractors do the therapy after the adjustments, which I thought was interesting. So we start with the adjustments. We're going 3 days a week. Well, they start getting worse.
Whoa.
He's having 60 to 100 seizures a day.
Whoa.
Now, to see my baby, my youngest, this 6-year-old boy, full of life, who is now like comatose almost because he's over medicated, in my opinion. My husband and I are not big on medication, but you got to do what you got to do to, you know, have some type of quality of life. That was the point that we were at, to where his teacher was tracking when he was able to go to school. She was tracking his seizures throughout the day. I mean, it just was out of control. My husband and I were very defeated. I called Sharon. I said, I need to talk to you. Can we meet for lunch? We met for lunch, and I just explained to her, I'm like, it's getting worse. I cannot stand to see my child go through this anymore. I don't know what to do. I don't feel like we can keep putting him through this. And she was looking me dead in the face. Beck, you have got to keep going. No way. You need to go to 14. I told you that from the beginning. You're only halfway there. Please just continue. And I said, okay, we will. We're gonna keep going. And so we continued on, and he had his 14th adjustment. That was March 23rd last year. It was his last seizure.
Wow. Number 14, yay! So what do people say around you with all this? I mean, because at what point, first of all, at what point did you and your husband, what number did you and your husband go, oh, this is really not working?
Like halfway. We were like at the seventh. We were about halfway through, and we were at the 7th adjustment. And fast forward real quick on the number 14, I wasn't familiar with the story of Jacob in the Bible. And I was going to set up this page, which I did on Facebook, called Jacob's Journey, Believe in Miracles, because, I just felt like that's a great way to start a following. So anyway, I ended up, I'll get into that, but I ended up researching and came across a message I came across at Facebook too, and it led me to a biblical page where it started talking about the story of Jacob in the Bible. So I'm reading through it, and as I'm reading, it starts talking about Jacob's journey. I was like, well, that sounds familiar. And Jacob's Journey, that name had always just been in my heart. Even when he was like going through the therapy and everything, that was always on my heart. And I was like, how about that? That's a coincidence. And as I read through, it talked about the story of Jacob, and then it talked about on his journey, it showed on a map that I saw. Guess how many stops they showed in Jacob's journey?
Could it be 14?
It's 14. So I called Sharon. I'm like, you did it again, Houghton. It did it again. Wow. And so once he had his last seizure, and I had so many people praying for us, and we really were blessed with how many. We were surrounded by a lot of faith-based folks that were praying for him. And we continued to pray after his last seizure, and we went ahead and went to the hospital to have a follow-up EEG. And we went, and he had a 2-hour EEG. The neurologist came into the office and had a puzzled look on her face, and we said, okay.
Don't you love that?
How did it go? Yeah. And she said, well, when he was here for 3 days, he was having, close to 100 seizures a day. And, he was monitored for 3 days straight, 24/7. And she said, there's not one seizure on his EEG. And, of course, my husband and I are blubbering and sobbing. And we're like, let us tell you a little story of what we've been through for the last few months. So we started to, we shared that with her. We started to pray and say, okay, God, you healed my son. What do you want us to do with this? And he very clearly spoke to my husband and I both and told us, I want you to spread the word. You got to take this. You got to go and take this because, not to get into any, I don't want to talk about any medicine, and I'm not discounting anything because, the medicine is there for a reason for sure.
Right.
But, neurologists focus on the brain. And we had not had anybody suggest an X-ray. So I wouldn't even know to check the spine, to see if there was something off that could potentially, essentially be pushing against the nervous system, blocking the energy flow through his body, which was, so this energy and this light that Sharon said she saw in his head, when she would think about his head, she said she saw this light and it was just bouncing around because it wasn't flowing properly through his, it was blocked basically by his C3 being off. So we said, okay, and I prayed that he would open the doors and guide me and show me what he wanted me to do with the story, and he wanted me to share it, and that's what I'm doing. And so my husband is writing a book. He's in the process of writing a book called, of course, Jacob's Journey. And for him, he's very quiet and more reserved and is kind of, I think, the typical father where he just kind of is quiet and processing this whole thing in his mind. So he is writing this book from a father's perspective, and being the man of the house and not being able to help your son, and your wife is, a mess. And, so it was very difficult for him. And he had a different type of experience going through this in perspective. And so he's able to, share that and express his feelings and his words through this book that hopefully will be coming out soon. And then I'm Sharon and I, were just talking on a regular basis, and we one day said, all right, let's do this together. Why don't we take this? Why don't we use our sources? And I definitely think that God used her and me together for this journey to take this message out, because she's an amazing digital strategist, and so she can help us, get the message out online. And I have a lot of contacts in terms of a big network in the music business and the people that I work with to help me get and share this message. And that's our mission right now. We are dedicated to talking to as many people as we can. And even if I can help one child, maybe even an adult, get healed and go to a chiropractor, have their spine looked at, it may not help them, but what if it does? Maybe their spine is out of alignment. Maybe they had some type of trauma and their spine is off. I don't know. What I do know is that God used me. God used my son. I know he chose my son, Jacob, because Jacob is strong and he handled it like a grown man. He never complained through this whole process. He would just, when he would have a seizure and he would eventually come out of it, he would just get up and go about his business just as usual. I so admire, and he's such an inspiration in terms of how he handled what he went through, having a seizure in front of all his friends at school, and that's hard for a child who's only 6 years old. But he handled it, like I always say, like a rock star. And he was truly the amazing strength that child has is just it's a miracle. I mean, and that's how I look at this, is that it is truly a miracle.
Now, how is he writing anything, Jacob? Like talking about has he talked about having any special experiences during this time?
No, he's an interesting fella. He's extremely silly and very outgoing, and it wasn't that big of a deal to him. Now, the only time I saw him get upset was when he got a birthday invitation to a friend's party that was at a laser tag type of place. And, when you have epilepsy and prone to seizures, you can't be in that type of flashing light type of place. So that's really the only time he was bummed that he couldn't go to a birthday party because of where it was at. But other than that, he just went with the flow. Like, Mom, I just had a seizure. Mom, I just had a seizure. And he would, now, when he was on the medication, he was having quite a bit of side effects, like I mentioned, with tingling and things like that. And one of the worst side effects that bothered him, really, really bothered him, is he knew what he wanted to say, but he couldn't get the words out. So he would try to talk, and he could not talk, and he could not get the words out, and he would stumble over his words, and he would get so frustrated, like, stop it, you stupid. I mean, he would yell, like, at his words. Come out words. Like, he was just like, I'm trying to talk. He would get very upset about that. But other than, but in terms of actually having the seizures, he just was amazing. He handled it so well. So well.
Wow. So because, This is. I mean, years ago. I was in Peru and dehydrated, and I actually had what they call a TIA, I believe. And I remember, like, one side of my body, like, falling out, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Am I having a stroke? Are you kidding me, God? You can't do this.
Right.
And I remember trying to get words out to say things and even write things, and I couldn't. The wrong word was coming out for what I wanted to say. And I really fought my brain and said, no, you are going to do this. You're going to be able to speak. You're going to be able to say what's going on. And I get it, how frustrating
Yeah.
that could be. Yeah. And to do that all the time. He's pretty brave.
He's a very brave child. I mean, even going to these hospitals and, his head's itching because he's got all these electrodes stuck all over his head and for 3 days. And, we got to help him get dressed and do all this stuff. And, he's antsy and he's 6. He's a boy. He wants to be up running around, not laying in a hospital bed. But he's a fighter. He's definitely a fighter. So he doesn't really talk about it or anything like that. Everybody keeps asking me, well, what's he think about, this video you guys are doing? And I'm like, it's Jacob. He just goes with the flow. He's like, cool, we're making a video. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, what's for dinner, Mom? That's just Jacob.
It would be interesting to hear if he had stories from what he saw, like during those seizures and stuff. Yeah. Yes, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, it's a good story, but he handled it like a trooper, and but it was the grace of God and using Sharon's gifts to help us heal him, and he's healed. He's healed, Sharon, and he's off medicine.
Yay! Those are always good things.
Yes.
So now, Sharon, in all this, have you seen cases like this before where you speak to someone and it just pops up what their remedy basically is? Have you seen that before?
Yes. It's really kind of started about 3 years ago, I would say. I actually shadowed a surgeon doctor in Columbus, Ohio. Just kind of like sat there. We, of course, had everybody sign waivers, but and it was a situation where I would just sit there and I would look at the patient and I would write down what's wrong with the patient. And there, again, I am not a medical doctor at all. I would write down what's wrong with the patient and how to heal the patient, and the doctor would be doing the same thing.
So you're like basically a medical intuitive.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So It's changed a lot. When I say it's changed, it's grown. My gift has grown, and it really is about the unseen. So, yes, I've had stories, even as recent as January and February of this year. Of one example was a baby that was in the womb that had a tumor in its heart, and was told that it wouldn't make it through the through the birth. And they actually expected the child to live an hour, maybe. And I was at a wedding, forgot about saying to her, I'm telling you, the Holy Mother of God's going to tell you your baby's going to be fine. And they're looking at me like, lady, you're crazy. And I'm like, I'm telling you, your baby's going to be fine. They had the baby, and he was born without the tumor.
Whoa.
And so those are the type of things that I have been experiencing and sharing. And, I remember one point saying, God, why don't you give me the gift of healing, because I'll be down at every hospital with children and try to heal every single one of them. Not that adults aren't important, but I'd love to go after the children and heal them.
Much easier.
And that's exactly what he's done. So I do see it's not always, God sometimes wants you. There's nothing anybody can do about it. But I usually can see what the problem is and go from there. Let's put it that way, depending on what's the best thing to do. For instance, with Becky and Jacob, the one thing that hit me was that it was his spine, and immediately I went, okay, I know the right chiropractor to do this job. I have many, many resources, but it's like, the right doctor to do the right thing, which is great too.
So where do you go from here, Sharon, with this? Because now that you're out there and people see like the miracle with Jacob, where his healing happened, and it wasn't a healing to say, okay, a light came down and healed him. This was a practical healing, which I love practical healings. But the source, it came from more of a divine source. So now, what are you going to do next with this? How where are you going to take this?
So my plan is twofold. One, as Becky said earlier, I want to speak. We want to go out and have events and literally have group events to share the message and talk about the healing of Jacob, and hopefully it'll help people that we reach out to. The second thing that I want to do is actually have what I would call almost like a clinic, where it would be rosary in the morning. We would have that first, and then we would have one-on-one time, and then, I'm all about the whole body. So whether it's cranial sacral, massage, meditation, horseback riding, whatever it is that we need to do in that almost, I want to say clinic, but that sounds so clinical, event, is that's what I'm looking at doing next.
Mm-hmm. So you're basically looking at other modalities, more, I hate the word new age, but alternative. Let's go with alternative modalities.
Well, it is alternative, but it's not in the sense that it is, because if I'm sitting there and I'm seeing somebody and I'm saying to them, you need to go find a surgeon. It's not that I'm necessarily going to heal you right there on the spot. It's more about seeing what the problem is and directing you into healing. I'm directing you to how to heal your body. And that's different than laying on hands and healing you right there. Mine is more about, I'm seeing the problem and this is what you need to do.
So for me, it's always about being practical.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Wow.
I agree.
Because this takes on a whole other avenue now. Because before, I figured you were doing more of, this is going on, and loved ones showing up and saying hi. And I know you helped me so much with my mom when my mom passed away, and just doing that process, and that was so helpful to me and healing for me, because when someone passes away, you always have some sense of guilt, and what could I have done better? Why did this happen this way? And you were able to put my heart at ease. And
well, Charlene, that is beautiful to say, because I will tell you, I still am helping quite a few people with grief, with death, with even living in life. It's funny. What is healing? I mean, healing is the mind, body, soul. And so to me, it's whether it's a cell that's out of whack or it's an emotion that needs help. That to me is all healing.
So now, how do we?
I'm sorry.
No,
I just wanted to add.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. I think she was chosen for a reason. Sharon has such a tenderness and genuine spirit to her that she's just somebody you want to chit chat with. You immediately fall in love with her as soon as you meet her and you talk to her. But she doesn't take herself too seriously, and she will giggle and laugh and at anything she's getting. As soon as I get a phone call from her and I hear giggling and say, "Listen to this," I'm like, "Oh no, now what happened? What did you see? Who did you heal?" And she just laughs at herself like, "Oh my God, he totally thought it was this, but I told him that and it worked." And I'm like, she just, her personality and she just has such a sweet soul to her that she's so easy to talk to. And I think she's definitely has the personality to be able to, easily talk to people and have them, confide in her and open up and really allow her to do what she needs to do and use her gift.
So you guys are making me blush.
Well, I think this actually is the grace,
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, because your apparitions with Mary, and I know you said I think we talked recently, and you were telling me that you also recently had an apparition, because we're looking at things that are happening on this planet. You see a lot of changes.
Right.
We see major weather changes. And you actually told me this at the beginning of the year, that there are going to be a lot of like incredible weather changes this year. And, when you see snow in Egypt and, people are dying over there because of it, and, the weather that's just going on all around the world, that's just, we don't hear about it on mainstream media because they're too busy with Mr. Trump. So yeah,
Say politics.
I was being kind.
It's funny. We've had 75 degrees here in Columbus, Ohio, in February.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some major changes going on.
Mm-hmm.
So what do they want? Namely, Mary, Blessed Mother, and Jesus. What do they want for us on this planet?
From what I get, they want several things. 1, to love one another. 2, to have peace in your heart. And of course, the third one, which is the biggest one, is to love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, and soul.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want. Yeah.
So now, how do you bring that to anybody? Because this is where a lot of things get very muddy. That people break it down into boxes. They go, okay, well, this is the Catholic box, this is the Christian box, this is the Methodist box, this is the Lutheran box, this is the Muslim box, this is the
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew box. So how do you hand that message off to everyone? Where there's some people that don't believe in Mary, some people that don't believe in Jesus,
right.
Some people, how do you share it then? How do you really spread it for everyone?
That's a great question. So since I started my rosary group, and you guys are going to laugh over this, but it started 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I started with 2 people on a snowy night in February, and since then it has grown to over 600 people. Yes, all have come to my home, which is interesting.
Crazy.
I know, crazy on that one. And I would say probably at least 50% of them are what we would call non-Catholics. They believe in God. Some of them were atheists, some were Muslims, some were Jewish, and they still come. And they all say the rosary with me or sit because we're really meditating on the life of Christ. We're really meditating on the journey of Christ. That's what the rosary is about. So it's fascinating because then after the rosary, and she always promised me, and I say she, the Blessed Mother, has always said, whenever you say the rosary, I am there. So then I did an outreach at a non-denominational church. It's called the Christian Spiritualist Temple. How's that for non-denominational?
Christian and temple in the same phrase? Wow.
Right. So, and I went in and I was speaking about my book, and I actually left there thinking, they'll never have me back again. They're probably thinking, Mary, what? And sure enough, I got a phone call, and they said, we want you to do rosary. And since then, that's been over 2 years now, and we have rosary in the church, and it's been fantastic because it's been really reaching to the inner city, and it's really reaching to those that have no connection with the church, which is fantastic. Then the third way I do it is by literally the grace, and that's what this grace is about. God doesn't care really. If we all believe in one God, God really doesn't care. He cares about you, your soul. He wants everyone. He wants everybody. And that's a hard concept because as human beings, we're very judgmental. And we want to say this group belongs there and that group belongs there. But in reality, God wants everybody, and he's going to fight for every single soul. And I know it's a big concept, but it's a real concept. And I see through grace, he's using people like myself, as I call ourselves, servants, messengers, mystics, whatever you want to call me. I'm delivering his message. So he's definitely talking. It's just a matter, are we listening?
Yeah. So then the other thing is, too, you have a book out, The Night of Mary, Sharing Heaven and a Call to Grace.
Yeah.
So where can people find that book?
They can go to Amazon, and they can buy it there, or they can also go to Barnes & Noble. I don't know if you guys have Barnes & Nobles, but anyways, Barnes & Noble, and also Balboa Press, and purchase it there. Or get the Kindle. Really
I've got the Kindle.
Kindle's easy, yeah.
Yeah, it was easy to read too. Yeah, it was a very interesting book, very beautiful story in the book. Yeah, about your life.
I'm hoping to have another one out within the next year, talking about grace and talking about what I actually see. But that's a hard one to describe. Not with the Blessed Mother, not with my Lord on the cross, but with just how I see every day.
When you look at things like, Medjugorje, they talk about, I think they were talking about the three kids. That's not is that Medjugorje?
Yeah.
With the three kids, where the oldest one.
Fatima. They had
Fatima.
This year.
Right. So that's coming up. So, what are you feeling? What are you sensing with all this? Because it almost feels, here you have on one side people that are more esoterical. They're talking about where we're moving to a higher dimension. We're out of third and eventually out of fourth, going into fifth dimension, which is a higher state of consciousness, basically. And then you have, you see things coming to a head as far as, like the Fatima prophecies and different prophecies that have come about, things saying this is the last pope, this is our, President Obama was our last president, all these last things. So what is your sense of all this?
I don't think it's the last of anything. First of all, I'm going to say that. Secondly, I do believe that, well, let me tell you what the Blessed Mother's telling me. That's the best way to put it. The Blessed Mother is telling me that the shrines around the world will light up. That's what I see. And she's been telling me this now for over 3 months, that the world will know that something else is going on besides what man is in control of. So I do get that. I'm not sure if it's going to happen this year, but I feel like it could happen this year. But, my time is not God's time. But I see just places around the world where they'll go, look at this, and they'll try to disprove it. And it may be Fatima, it may be Medjugorje, it may be the grotto down at my farm. It could be anywhere. I do see that happening. She also told me that this is the year of the light. And if you know the Rosary, you'll know the Illumination Mysteries. She was showing me the Illumination Mysteries as we were saying the Rosary in one of my Rosary groups at the beginning of the year in January. And she said, this is the year of light. Follow the Illumination Mysteries. That's how this year is going to play out. So I thought that was very interesting. And then she also has me praying for several countries out there that, we've had problems in the world with France and Brussels and things like that. And I've been praying for a couple of other countries out there that are in Northern Europe that very much worry me. And she's asking for prayers for them. So I'm getting global things. I'm also getting very much my next door neighbor. So, yeah. So it sounds like I would be very scattered, but it's funny when I'm not doing it, I feel very bored. Isn't that funny? Like, oh, hey, what's going on today? Yeah.
No, nothing, no insight, no.
Yeah, what?
Yeah. So so what do you say now, both of you? Becky, you can answer this too. What do you say to the critics where they go, "Oh, that was just a fluke"? Jacob, she just assumed because of how he looked, because, we talked about you never meeting him. But, it was how he looked. So, what do you say to the critics? Because we'll have critics.
Yeah. And I expect that. Once I shared this story, I knew there's always, the yin and yang, there's always good, bad with the good. And it is a very personal thing. And, and if whether you have, a relationship or, follow a religion, the fact of the matter is it happened. And if you believe, and I believe that this message, we were meant to go through this and share this message, and I believe it because of my faith in the Lord, and that this is what He wanted me to do because it's going to change lives. So I can't really focus on, anything negative, because I'm on a mission, and my goal is to get this in front of as many people as I can, and in hopes to help other people. It's just the awareness of it, that it's one more option. When you have gone through what we've gone through, it's one more option to look at from, an epilepsy perspective, but also in the power of prayer. And if you believe, things can really happen. So that's where my heart is. That's where it'll stay. But I do know that I'm going to, I will, whatever comes at me, I can handle.
And what about you, Sharon?
It's funny because I have so many people that have not experienced. They just hear about it third party, or they have a struggling to believe in God at all, or they're struggling in some way in their life. And I find that people that usually are the ones that push the hardest back are the ones that, one, probably they can't comprehend or don't want the responsibility of God. They don't want the responsibility of their life in front of God. That's number one. And so I think that's very important to understand and almost have compassion for. And then secondly, I think that if they push back, I'm just going to have them call Jacob. No, I'm kidding.
Jacob will tell them how it is.
But no, but the naysayers, I'll always have naysayers. We always will have naysayers. That's just life. There's a yin, there's a yang, as they say. And that's okay. You just keep walking in Christ.
Right. Well, as they say, it's not for the faint of heart, as you've experienced, Becky.
No, definitely not. Wow.
So now how can people see the video? Because I thought the video, it was just so beautiful. And where are the links that they can go to get more information on both of you?
They can go, we can go to, we have both a YouTube page and Facebook pages. We have a YouTube page called Inspiring Stories that we just launched this morning, actually, and it has the video on it. And then they can also go to Facebook.
Wait a minute. On the Inspiring Stories, it's Inspiring Stories, Jacob's Journey, Believe in Miracles.
Yes.
Okay.
Jacob's
Journey. That's on YouTube.
It's on
Facebook
YouTube.
is the same. Yeah, and Facebook is the same. Jacob's Journey 2009.
Yes.
Believe in Miracles.
Believe in Miracles. Yes. Facebook.com/Jacob's Journey. Jacob's Journey 2009. We'll take you straight to the page.
And also on my Grace of Mary site on Facebook. If you go to the Grace of Mary on Facebook, you will find it there too.
Okay. So people can follow you.
Yes. And I hope they do, and I hope they watch the video and share it and help me spread this amazing story and gift, and with the goal to, help other people that are struggling with this.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it when it comes like that. Yeah. So thank you, incredible ladies, for taking the time out to talk to us today and sharing your story. Thank you, Becky Long, and thank you, Sharon Houghton. We are grateful that, you took the time and you're willing to share and open your hearts and bless us with grace.
Thank you. It was so nice of you to put us on the air.
Great.
Yes, thank you
great.
so much. It was nice talking with you.
Yeah, great to have you both on. You've been listening to Boundless Spirit Radio with Charlene Springer. We'll see you next time.